Well, hello. How are you today?
How are you doing today? I'm doing good.
I'm good, good. I'm doing good too. Did you see the new intro Stasia did? Didn't she do an amazing job? It was wonderful. So, for everybody that's joining us, we are here today for a series that we are calling Beyond the Boat. And it is an opportunity for us to get to know crew members a little bit better beyond what we typically know of them and to kind of learn a little bit about them. So, Ben, thank you for being here with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I got all confused with days. Who keeps track of days anymore?
I know,
Anyways,
right? What are days? What's time? I mean, it's just a guideline, right? Who needs that kind of structure in their life?
uh, instructions for nerds. Come on.
Right? Um, so I am very excited. For those of you that are just joining over from the boat, I can only see like one comment at a time, so I don't really do a lot of roll call just because I'm afraid I would miss everybody. So we're going to go ahead and just jump in and get started. I am super excited to have you here, Ben. You have so much wisdom and so much insight. The little blurb that I wrote was somebody who is a jokester who loves to read the DSM-5 for fun, and but also has so much to bring. Coming out of codependency, coming out of a cult, having a mom that was a diagnosed psychopath, and really kind of going through some of that stuff is a lot of things that I never knew about you until you started sharing on needing a meeting. And then I was like, oh, this goes a lot deeper than what I thought.
Hmm,
So let's start off with what brought you to the boat in the first place. How did you find the boat?
that's an
Do you
interesting
remember?
question. I had to think about it. Yeah, I was originally I was on Aaron Smith Levin's channel, and he had Tommy on, of course, as you probably remember.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, decided to check Tommy out, and I that came at a very opportune time because
Hmm.
while I'm not dealing with addiction issues so much, I have been dealing with codependency,
Hmm.
depression, things like that throughout my life, as well as just needing social interaction. So yeah, that really helped the lifeboat really helped fulfill that role, and I found it to be an excellent place to um, what's the term I'm thinking of, to get that connection that Tommy keeps talking about and preaching, so yeah.
Right. Nice. Nice. Well, we're so glad that you came over and stuck around. Let's talk a little bit about codependency. That is something that used to be a really big term. Everybody knew what codependency was a few years ago. It seems like things kind of come in cycles. Now, a lot of people are talking about narcissists and things like that. So it seems like things kind of ebb and flow. Um,
Mhm.
Codependency, for those of you who aren't really familiar with it, people who are codependent live their lives based on what other people think, and their self-worth is only brought to them by serving others rather than living life on their own terms. Codependent people look for external factors to validate themselves, and that could be substance abuse, people, work, food, gambling, sex, any of those types of things.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of like a quick, um, snapshot of what that is. So talk to us, Ben, if you would, a little bit about, what did your codependent relationship look like, as much as you are comfortable sharing with that.
First of all, let me get a volume check. I just want to make sure that my audio's okay. Um,
Yeah.
okay, the Codependency for me started, yeah, it started really at a super young age, mainly brought about by an incident with a teacher that I had
Mm.
as a young child, and involving um, high pitched noise. I don't know if that's me or not. I don't have any. Do you hear high pitched noise from me on your end?
Um,
Let me try muting myself real quick, see if it disappears.
I can hear it now. Let's see.
Do you hear it now?
I hear it now. So
Interesting. I
I
wonder.
think it must be you. And whoever said I looked gorgeous, thank you.
Hmm. But yeah, regardless, sorry about that, people. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is. But this might be it. Um, regardless, yes, I had an incident regarding a teacher, wherein I was called out of class and made to do something that really wasn't. It'd be considered. Actually, wouldn't be considered. It was be sexually inappropriate. Ever since that age, I grew out of that with a codependent mindset that was caused by that incident, where I began to think I did something wrong to deserve that. So then that I needed the approval of people who I thought were in an authority over me. And that really grew to the point. Codependency is a term that's kind of used as a catch all, but it's
Mhm.
basically an unhealthy relationship where you put too much value, too much of your own self worth upon other people. If this person doesn't approve of me, you have to approve of me. If you don't approve of me, let me know where I'm going wrong and I will change that about me. Now,
Mhm.
to an extent, we have relationships where, you know what, we have to grow.
Mhm.
That's fine. That's not necessarily codependency, but where it's destructive, that is
Right.
where you really get into the edge of codependency. And I carried that with me to my adult life
Mhm.
unknowingly. And that's the way
Mhm.
it is with so many limiting beliefs. We accept them
Right.
to be true in our hearts. So we just, we just, when we're analyzing them, we just, we accept them so we don't see them. We don't
Mhm.
see these flaws, which is what is so handy about connection, getting the input of
Right.
other people. And they don't even have to be necessarily behavioral experts, just people that can say, "Hey, I notice you're doing this. You ever think about this?" That kind of
Right.
thing. But yes, I carried that with me into my adult life, and it was very destructive in my life. It was reinforced by my mother, who I
Mhm.
absolutely had to have her approval on everything. It,
Mhm.
I went on, most kids realize at the age of probably 10 that their parents aren't perfect. I
Right.
didn't come upon that realization until well into my 20s. So I was very stunted in that. Well, and I think it was stunted because I was so the overused, to use the overused term again, because I was so codependent. I refused to see it. I kept thinking the problem was with me, not with everybody else is perfect.
Right.
Problems are obviously with me. I need to change. I need to adjust myself to fit in. And the thing is, it's not even about fitting in, it's what your perceptions are of what you think fitting in is required, or what's required to fit in, rather. But yeah, I carried that with me well to just a few years ago. And, in fact, I think I will always be a recovering codependent. It's always
Mhm.
going to be there. Despite
Mhm.
working on it, that tendency will always be there. It
Right.
wasn't until I had a job where I looked up way too much to my boss, and I had to have his ask. I had so much I needed his approval that when he
Mhm.
disapproved of me, I thought, well, this is the end. How can I go on? And
Oh, wow.
to take any relationship to that extreme is just, um, it's just destructive. I mean, to literally destructive. When you're thinking about ending your life because somebody's opinion, because somebody may think something about you that, yeah, it's that's bad. But it was a belief that I had that started at an incident and was nurtured throughout my life, which is often the case with codependent people. They
Hmm.
are made to be inferior. There's also a lot of limiting beliefs in there. I will not measure up. I'm not good enough. I'm not, in my case, I'm not as good as my brothers.
Hmm.
it's, this long litany of limiting beliefs. So I'm sorry, I'm so long winded.
No, 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 no. I love it because it's such a good explanation of what it is. And somebody who might not um, know what it means or what it looks like and could benefit from recovery of that or exploring that further, I think it's very, very helpful. Um, I wonder if you could talk about how did you find out that you were codependent, and what did you do about that? Like, were you just reading something one day and you're like, this fits and I need to go to therapy, or what did that kind of look like for you when it
That
clicked?
is, that is a very good question. It wasn't until that incident with my boss that I talked about that I decided to check myself into there's a treatment center that deals a lot with addiction, but they
Hmm.
also they were kind of what do you call it, a dual diagnosis center. They deal with the chemical addiction, but realize oftentimes people with chemical addictions are self-medicating because of another problem. And
Right.
sorry, swallowed a
That's okay.
breath mint in my lungs. Um, doesn't they don't your lungs don't like taking in solids. I found out.
No, not a good idea.
Yeah, who knew? But yeah, like after that incident, I checked myself into that dual diagnosis center in Tucson, and hearing their revelation or hearing them talk about it, I'd heard the term codependent, but it was kind of like the phrase "I'm okay, you're okay." I thought it was all psychobabble, doesn't mean
Right.
anything. And then they
Right.
started breaking down that yes, you're depressed. This is why. And they really started unpeeling the onion for me. I
Hmm.
mean, that was just the start of it. Um, but yeah, they did the same thing with me that they do with a lot of alcoholics, where you go in for a month or two, and then you come out and you have to um, what is it, pledge to do 90 meetings in 90 days type of thing.
Hmm.
I had to do a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous just because Codependence Anonymous doesn't exist in a lot of smaller towns, which is where I
Right.
lived at the time. Um,
Right.
but yeah, and I've been working on it ever since. When I was in for treatment, I went through a process called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and
Hmm.
really that took away a lot of the initial trauma I had of that first event where I did something wrong. I am something, guilt and shame. I did something wrong for guilt. Shame is or I did something wrong for guilt. I am something wrong for shame.
Hmm.
Those two beliefs, I was able to get over that initial incident pretty quickly through EMDR and, of course, a lot of therapy.
Right.
The subsequent events, it's like this is what my life has turned into, just that repeated pattern. That's been an ongoing thing, but it was something I really got into once I started working for a gentleman by the name of Chase Hughes on his web page. And I
Mhm.
went through a process there, confidence reboot. And in
Mhm.
that, you have, you know, of course, you have talking about limiting beliefs. And that's where I realized that this is where this comes from. This
Mhm.
is a limiting belief now. I have to deal with it. And through, several processes in there, including hypnosis, I really started to notice major change in my life. And, I don't know, for somebody who's codependent, as heavy as I was, I don't know if you ever, I hate to use negative terms. I don't know if you ever truly get over it, meaning that I
Right.
don't know if you ever get to the point you don't require maintenance. You don't
Mhm.
need to stop. Why am I
Mhm.
doing this? Why? What are my motives? Am I repeating old habits, old
Right.
behaviors and habits and things like that? But that's what the boat helps with. That's
Uh-huh.
why you avail yourself to places with connection and other
Right.
people, such as yourself. It's like a little check. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we can spot behaviors in other people that you start to correct them and you realize, or not correct them, you start to offer them input and then you start realizing, oh, I see that in me. Like, oh,
Right.
wow, I'm a hypocrite. So it's like, wow, that's so interesting. But that's just the way we're wired. We spot stuff in other people that we don't notice in ourselves. And it's just
Mhm.
because we exist in our head. So,
Right. Well, and to go to what you said, we start noticing things in others, and then we see it in ourselves. That's kind of somebody mirroring behavior for us to correct and heal in ourselves. And I don't think that's hypocritical at all. I think that's very self-aware to be able to see, oh, I'm gonna point this thing out for Christy. Oh, wait a minute, I have the same thing. And I think that's how we help each other heal in peer support and everything else is, because we might have one day where we're on a total roll, right? And we've got all of the things, and we're like, it's this and it's that and da 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 da. And then, you go back a few days later, or maybe you rewatch it, and you see
mm,
where you can improve that in yourself. So I don't think that that's hypocritical. I think that that's self-aware. I think it would be hypocritical if you continued to,
that's
do that and not change the behavior. Be a
good.
little bit of an issue. I wanted to ask you, did AA help you with your codependency, not struggling with any addictions, really per se?
Mm,
Was it helpful to you in case there's someone else out there that is going through that, doesn't have the opportunity
sure.
to go to that? How
Sure.
did you feel about that?
Um, the well, first of all, at the recovery center, we had a blended group where it was kind of like it was run like an AA meeting.
Hmm.
They had a lot of the same methodologies. They would even go through the 12 steps. Uh,
Hmm.
However, they didn't go through a lot of the alcoholic centric things. It was kind of a group for
Uh,
alcoholics, codependence, narcotics. They kind of homogenized, I don't know if that's even a term. They kind of generalized it down for everybody. But yes, in AA, I did actually get a bit from that. It allowed me just a simple repetition of getting up and saying, I'm bitter, I'm a codependent. And it's kind of odd to do that at an AA meeting. It's usually best to
right.
sit and talk with, find a facilitator and take them aside and say, hey, this group. How do you
Hmm.
think this would play out? And they'll usually say, oh, no problem. And it's been my experience, a lot of the groups are pretty open to that and,
Hmm.
pretty non-judgmental, um, at least in regards to that. So, yeah, there was a lot I gained from that. I was able to see a lot of people who they would talk about their alcoholism, but they
Hmm.
would also talk about the reasons for it. And you would start to say, oh, I see that. That's me. It's just I didn't
Hmm.
self medicate with alcohol to that extreme.
Right. Right.
Or I I didn't do this, but yeah, and you're able to talk on that level, which I think
Mhm.
everybody to some extent, everybody who self-medicates at least, I think most, if not all, understand that. So, yeah,
Right.
it was a bit of an eye-opening experience, and group therapy with people who were in there for all sorts of things. We wouldn't talk about codependency. We just sit and talk. That I found to
Mhm.
be very productive, even though you're not saying, "Hey, I'm codependent. I'm working on this, on this." Just sitting and talking to other people's with their life's events, the things that were troubling them. Just that, even
Mhm.
that was able to kind of, I'm starting to get this. And you can talk, you can talk to a therapist all you, well, I shouldn't say it this way. A good therapist will help you, but
Right.
until you take it to a meeting or take it to somebody else, you can get it out of your head and into your heart.
Mhm.
You use
Mhm.
the kind of the Greek saying your soul's in your gut, but
Right.
it's kind of that acceptance of not just head knowledge, but I get this now.
Heart
It's not just
understanding.
words that, yeah, this therapist has said. It's like, you have that aha moment, and it's like,
Right.
okay, I see this now. I see what I'm doing. I see how
Right.
I can adjust it. And a lot of times with a lot of codependence, it's caused from a lack of confidence, and
Mhm.
confidence, help, you know, how do I say this? Taking stuff for confidence was a great help in my case. And that's what a lot of the hypnosis was aimed at. But yeah, there's all sorts of different methodologies to give somebody self confidence. Even the simple act of standing up and going, "Oh, okay, we're going to go around the circle." Everybody stands up, says, I'm this person, I'm that person. Even just the simple act of standing up, saying who you are and
Mhm.
what what you're dealing with. Even that can help you really gain quite a bit of confidence if you do it enough. Yes, you will.
Right.
You'll start to bear some fruit with that. So
Well, and I would think it would help you to feel seen and heard and listened to, in a codependent relationship or a relationship, with your mom, as it were. I can imagine that there was a lot of not feeling seen and feeling heard, and that's, really helpful. And speaking to what you were talking about, helping someone else, isn't it amazing how we can get all of this knowledge, we can have all of this knowledge, it can be there, but until we really help somebody
yeah,
and and start to share, then we grow in other ways. And I think that's where, um, I forget how the saying goes, but it's something about, if you really want to know if you've learned something, teach it to someone else. So if you've really learned something, you'll be able to help someone else through it. And I think that that's helpful too, because that gives you self confidence as well. So not only are you, being seen and heard, but you're able to help somebody, in a way that's not self-serving, but that shows that, you do have self-worth and value, because you're able to help this person through that.
yeah.
I think that that's beautiful. I
Mhm.
want to know, so you talked about EMDR. Did you ever do any DBT training, or was it just EMDR that you did in hypnosis?
I haven't been through any training with DBT
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was used. That was what our one of my facilitators in that um, treatment center. That is one of the one of many techniques they
Mm-hmm.
used. Uh, it was, how do I say this? They really do a lot of places. They keep you pretty busy. You're just
Yeah.
slammed. From the moment you wake up, okay, you're going to be working on this with this counselor, be working on that, be working on this, and a lot of times it isn't until you come out years later and you start to
Mm-hmm.
realize, oh, I I see what they were doing. There's a pattern here. I see how they were doing this. Even
Mhm.
simple things of having you sit down and just, one of the presentations you give is, this is my life in 30 minutes. And, you have to come up with a timeline, you have to do this little silly chart. And
Oh.
even the practice of doing that, it's like at the time you're thinking, what possible value is there in this? I don't care to do this. But you come out, it's like, oh, I get it now, because they're making, by going through it, by going through it several times, you start to learn, this is what happened. This is why. This is,
Mhm.
you're not challenging basic biological fact, like, why am I here? But why am I
Right.
here this way? And
Right.
you start asking, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand. And it's those aha moments that I find, that often people are in therapy, they don't necessarily get it in therapy. It's not until
Mhm.
they're on driving home or even weeks or months later. It's like, I get it. It's like, oh,
Right.
it all becomes clear and everything starts to unfold before you. And it's like, oh, this is great. But yes, I'm just starting my study of different what do you call those, different therapeutic methods. I've been
Mhm.
studying Gestalt therapy, and Krista Melinda turned me on to a great book, a great textbook that she was given in college that I'm going through right now. So, yeah, but through that reading, I'm able to see. Oh yeah, okay, okay, I see
Right.
how they're doing this. And
Right.
having that as a baseline, or having that experience as a baseline, has really helped me in so many ways that I didn't think was even possible. Even just
Mhm.
going to a therapy group meeting where y'all sit around and just talk about things that you don't think there's no value in talking about. After a while, it's like, aha, yes,
Right.
okay, this is
Right.
okay. I'm getting this. But yeah, you were talking earlier about the psychopathic mother. And it's one of those things that it took me a long time to realize, or to accept. This A lot of things weren't done out of maliciousness. It was just simply, a lot of people, parents, they try to do the best with what they have.
Yeah.
And but yeah, my earliest memory, the earliest childhood memory I have is one time when I had this bear. I absolutely loved this bear. I think I was two, maybe three or four. I don't know. But I absolutely loved this bear. This bear embodied everything to me. It was my friend. And my older brothers took it and hung it. And I was just torn apart. I ran to my mother, bawling my head off. And she laughed because she thought it was funny. And things like that to a child, I believe, and I've heard some reading on this, that children go through a fear impact period. This happens a lot with in dog training. You'll hear this,
Mm.
where things will happen to you at a critical point. It will be leveraged much more than it would be at a different time. And I can see events like that really embedded a lot of negative, what was the term, ants, or limiting beliefs in me, that were just repeated over and over. It's one thing to do something to a child once, and okay, that
Right.
can cause trauma. But when you
Mhm.
repeat it, it starts to become an embedded, hypnosis. There's a term of auto hypnosis, or auto, yes, basically where you repeat something. And that's a form of hypnosis. If it's repeated enough, you will believe it no matter what it is. If you, oh, I'm horrible at this. You tell yourself, I'm
Mhm.
horrible at this over and over and over again. Whether or not you're even horrible at it, you will start to think, I can't do this. Freddie
Right.
Mercury's a prime example. He was told, really good piano player, keyboard player. He was told
Mm.
that, oh, you. no good. I don't know who told him that, but he believed to the point where he stopped playing keyboards, and in his later life. And yeah, so yeah, if you listen to something enough, or if you have a belief that you repeat in your head enough, you'll start to believe it. And we tend to believe negatives more than we do really positives. Seems to be our default switch.
Isn't that interesting that we believe so many more negative things about ourselves than positive? And I know it's hard for me sometimes. People will say something positive about me, and I'm like, "Ah, thanks. And it's really hard to accept that, sometimes. And um, it's true about things getting embedded in you, in your psyche. I want to ask you about this bear being hung. So why did they do that? Like, what? Um, w- was it joking? Like, that is such a traumatic. I mean, that's
Yeah.
traumatic to me right now. I'm 48. I can't imagine, being so young and having something like that happen. Like, what was that?
My brothers were much older than I was. My next oldest brother's 10 years in front of me. So they
Oh,
would have been probably 15, 16, that general area. I
okay.
think it was just, you know, that's a good question because I never really gave that a whole lot of thought. I keep thinking just boys being boys, but I'm not aware of anybody. I like to think none of my friends would do that, when they were 15 years old to a young child.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
there were multiple. I mean, multiple brothers, so they could have been cutting up to each other. There's been a lot of
Hmm.
research to show if you have a group of people, that group has a mind of its. It's like you have
Hmm.
person A, person B, person C, and then you have group D has its own
Right,
psychology that they'll pick
right.
up. Mob mentality, maybe not mob, but its own different, distinct mentality. That may have been it. It could be that was behavior that was learned, uh, maybe from the same experience, maybe from the same. How do I say this? The same psychology that they were with their mother. I mean,
Right,
um, I never really gave that. That is really interesting. Though I never really thought about that much as to why. I was always concerned with the fact it was done.
right,
Uh, but yeah,
right.
they probably have a good, they not a good reason, but they probably have a reason. I bet it was probably humor.
Now,
Um,
do you still talk to your brothers? Is your mom still, with us on this earthly plane? Do you have a
yeah,
relationship with them at all? What does that look like?
I do have a relationship with my mother. It's very, hmm, that's another good question. How do I explain this? It's very, I don't want to say superficial, but one of the things I've learned is, especially with somebody who, how to use this without using the term, um, somebody who operates in a very covert fashion. Um, you know, they'll pick topics that they know you're going to disagree with them just to get an emotional response. Well,
Right,
after you've been through that ad nauseum, is there really any point in discussing it? When you
mhm,
know it's going to cause a conflict. So I've had to create a some pretty strong boundaries, and exercising such boundaries are never fun.
right.
Um, and they're from what I've been reading, it's not much fun for anybody because at its
Mhm.
core, at least in your perspective, you're putting limitations on a relationship, and in your reasoning, I'm putting this relationship at risk to have this boundary. So they're not comfortable. But I've had some pretty strong boundaries where, um, where start something would come up and it's like, oh well, it's like insert subject here. I won't necessarily go into the subject, but where she knows you're going to have a fight, and you can sit there and say, "Mom, we discussed this. I'm not going to talk about this. You'll get it again. You'll get it again."
Mhm.
Finally, you have to say, "Okay, mother, I'm going to hang up the phone now," and you have to actually exercise that boundary a few times because the
Mhm.
second you put it up, you will be challenged with it, and it's always that exercising of it. A boundary that's repeated to yourself isn't really a boundary. It's not a boundary until you enforce it. And
Right.
that's where the rubber meets the road, as I think Tommy says that a bit. Um, and it isn't until you exercise that boundary that you can get, that boundary communicate that you're serious about this.
Mhm.
And so now, yeah, after doing that several times, and
Mhm.
it still comes up.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's basically whether, how am I feeling? How are you feeling? What's happening in town? Really
Right.
superficial things, but that's some relationships have to be at that level because they're going to be destructive. And
Right.
it's part of self-care. It's not necessarily fun. It's not great, but it is what it is. And
Mhm.
it's good to still have a relationship with a parent that's like that. Because at least you have some relationship versus breaking it off, which some people need to do for their own health. And I
Right.
get
Right.
that. But it's like if you can
Mhm.
salvage anything, you know, just speak to this person, you know, um, because sooner or later, one of you won't be here anymore. And
Yeah.
kind of like Sammy Hagar, I'll use him as an example. He was always talking about, you don't want to take that negative crap with you. When that person
Exactly.
goes, you go. You don't want to take that with you when you go into the hereafter. So just
Right.
try to unload what you can, and it's definitely be healthy for you.
So, for everybody out there struggling with enforcing boundaries, because setting them is not easy, but it's pretty. You can come up with a list of things in your mind, in your journal, whatever that you're like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I wonder if you could talk about how it felt for you the first time you really had to set that boundary. What was your mom's response? How, like, and obviously it gets easier, right,
Yeah, yeah.
as we practice it. But I think what's scary for me, I really have to get better about saying for people because they don't know everybody's mind. But what's what was difficult for me was the first time, really kind of saying, no, you're not going to do that to me. And now it just flies off. I'm like, no, 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 we don't do that. um, but what was that like? Maybe give some insight or some encouragement if you have some to people who know what the boundaries need to be, but have difficulty enforcing those. What
Oh,
was that like for you? I mean, because that had to have been difficult. I
yeah.
would think at the least.
Sure. Yeah, and even though, um, and I want to preface this with not everything. My mother did a lot of good things for me throughout her life.
Mhm.
There's the negatives always tend to stick in our
Right.
brains, but yeah, she did a lot of good things for me too. And it was setting that boundary was not easy at all because instantly you would or instantly I'm going to try to use the I pronoun, not you. Uh,
Right.
let's try not to disassociate so early in the conversation. Um, a lot of it was really stressful because when you poke on a nerve with somebody who may be histrionic, um, somebody who may have a lot of strong ego issues, I'll just put it like that, it will turn, or at least in my case, it turned from, nagging, 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 you're causing a fight. Okay, mother, I'm going to hang up. Well, you don't love me. Whoa, wait, a minute, where did this come from? You, you don't love me. Like, well, mother, I told you, I have a boundary, and you know, uh, what does this boundary that I set mean to you? Well,
Mhm.
you don't love me. You're always so mean to me. You just never listen to me and blah blah. It's like, okay, I've asked you to describe this boundary that I set that says I will
Right.
not talk to you about things we disagree with. You
Mhm.
turned around and started talking about yourself. Now, can you describe this boundary? And it would be the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to hang up now, and this is not easy. And
Mhm.
just end the conversation. Give yourself a chance to cool down. They'll probably call back, or you can call back. I had to do that a few times and then act like nothing had happened. Just start talking, talk about weather, you know, talk about this, talk about that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I had to do that. And when I set the boundary initially, I failed at enforcing it more times than I can count. I would like, okay, I'm going
Mhm.
to set this boundary, and okay, I'll go along, and you start getting in the fight,
Right.
and yeah, I had to keep plugging at it for a very long time, but there is an end in sight. It does, like you were saying, it's a muscle,
Mhm.
and it gets easier every time. And as you start enforcing it with this person, they will pick up on it. It's not always a battle. Once you start enforcing a
Mhm.
boundary with somebody who at least will respect a little bit of it, it gets much easier. Those
Mhm.
occurrences of where fights come up, after you've illustrated enough times, they will start to become less and less. And now it's at the point where just, I'm not going to talk about that right now. And it's usually all I need is just to simply say, um, let's change the subject. This is something
Uh-huh.
I know we don't see eye to eye on.
Mhm.
And that was one of the things with growing up with somebody like that. It took me a very long time to realize when you're around somebody who, I hate to use a term, but I'll use it because it's so overused, narcissist, that
Right.
you hear you're used to getting your end. You're not as good as person X, okay?
Mhm.
But then you hear them talk on the phone with their friends, and whoever's not present is, oh, did you see what she did? Blah, blah. Or you see these meetings, and whoever's missing, oh yeah, you see this triangulation going on, and it doesn't take long to
Right.
realize if it's being done to me, it's being done to my other brothers. And does that
Right.
cure things? No. Does it even help? Maybe a little, because you realize you're not being singled out. Um,
Mhm.
it's the way they are.
Mhm.
And I know it's excusing bad behavior, but when you're talking something biologically wrong, or even somebody who may have a chemical dependency. It's like, I've had good friends, really good friends that, good people that have done things they aren't proud of. And oftentimes it's
Yeah.
because the chemical was doing
Mhm.
that. So, did I
Right.
answer the question?
You
I,
you did answer the question. You answered
yeah,
it very
just,
thoroughly.
I
I
just,
was gonna say, I think it's amazing that you mentioned that. I think it's encouraging to other people that you mentioned that the first few times you failed and you had to just keep working at it, because I think people think sometimes, I know I used to think that, oh, you set this boundary and then you squash everything. And that's really hard to do, especially like you said, when you've been conditioned to believe this, or maybe your self confidence, your self worth, your self esteem, those kinds of things are, um, maybe not as high as they could be. Or maybe you're somebody who questions yourself, have a lot of self doubt. Um, that can be difficult. And I think to say too, there are people who do understand boundaries and will respect them, and then there are people who are just gonna stomp all over them, and those are the ones that, I mean, that's why we have those those
Yeah.
boundaries. And I want to touch on, because I do want to keep talking about your mom. So, a psychopath versus a sociopath. So, a psychopath has no conscience, and a sociopath has a tiny little bit of one. And sociopaths are normally antisocial, and they have egocentric behavior, which means it is all about them, but on a much grander scale. There's a lack of remorse and a lack of empathy. The causes can be genetic or they can be neurobiologic. So I'm wondering, the reason I bring that up was, did that gene get passed on to anyone else in your family, or is this just your mom and like a situation of how she was raised or something?
To the best of my knowledge, no, this has not been passed on, and I find it interesting. I have, hmm, yeah, because I know that I have real deep emotions. I know the
Hmm.
brother up, my next oldest brother, has really deep emotions as well. The other two, not so much, but they
Hmm.
don't exhibit, they don't seem to exhibit. And of course, I am not a therapist,
Right.
but yeah, just interacting with them, they
Hmm.
don't seem to have the same qualities. I think, and I've only done a bit of preliminary research on this because I know there's a wealth of information. Some of it contradictory, unfortunately. That's the nature of the web, I guess.
Right.
But um, it seems that there's a lot of people who become empathic that have had
Hmm.
traumatic upbringings, and it's because they gain that need to be able to, how are people, what are people around me like, what, that
Right.
kind of walking on eggshells type thing.
Hmm.
Hypervigilance would be a good
Yes.
term. um, but yeah, I know that her upbringing wasn't all that great, so it may have been hereditary. um,
Hmm.
her mother, yeah, there were some things there too.
Oh,
um,
wow.
so it probably was hereditary, versus uh, some biological injury or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I've always wanted to be able to quantify a little more. Is that always the case? What is the relationship between psychopathic people and their offspring? Are they always
Right.
empaths, or you know? So far, I haven't really found a whole lot on that, but yeah, that is something I would like to know. Something I'm continuing to look at in my way too long of a reading list. But,
Well, I do think though some of the most, I know for me, some of the people who have been through some of the most serious trauma, where they've really been beat down and deconstructed and really, really just broken. Like,
yeah,
there's no other term to use other than just broken. When it seems, and I know is my case when I rebuilt myself, um, empathy was there, and but it was a survival thing,
mm,
as you said, a little bit. Knowing how it feels when you walk into a room, just feeling the energy when you walk into the room,
yeah,
because that's how you survived for a very long
yes,
time. And it's what got you through it. It's how you knew what to do or what to say. And I think that that's it can be a a result of
mm,
things like that. So whenever I meet somebody who's super empathic, my first question is always, tell me about yourself. What'd you go through? Like,
Mm,
because, I mean, I do think there are natural born empaths. I mean, absolutely. But I do think empaths are made. I really do. I believe that people who are deeply empathic are so
mm,
because there was some serious trauma there,
yeah,
and it's just how they
yeah.
handle that. Um, Talk a little bit, if you would. I want to go back to, because I've never known anyone who's done this, and so I wanted to hear how this works for you. Hypnotherapy. How did that work? Did they just sit down and be like, "We're going to hypnotize you," and or did you volunteer? Like, was it helpful? Because I could see where you could things could be. This is what like could somebody plant something there, because
Mhm.
that's something that I think about. So how did that look for you, and how helpful was it? I mean, is it something that if someone's like, "Oh, I'm thinking of doing this," would you recommend that? Like, share with me that experience.
My first couple of experiences with hypnotherapy were really not too productive because I found myself always like, okay, okay, pay attention. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Why are you doing that? Why did you say
Right,
that? What's up with this hyper vigilant shield that we put up so
right.
often? It wasn't until I actually got into recorded hypnotherapy for self confidence that
Oh,
it really started to help, and wasn't it wasn't instant. That was one of the things that took me. I like
Sarah,
Tara's
Ben tries to
comments.
plant hypnosis on me all the time. I wonder if it's working.
But it wasn't until I started undergoing the confidence reboot, and that has a lot of um, recorded, of course, hypnotherapy.
Mhm,
And I always thought just listening to it that it would be instant. And it's like, no, this takes a while. You have to
mhm,
repeat it. It's not anything, most things that are um,
mhm.
involve anything in the brain, you have to repeat to create that neural pathway and build it up. And, listening to the first one, it's like, okay, yes, we created a computer, this is in a hypnotic setting, uh, created a computer that's plugged into your brain, and you sit down
Mhm.
at this computer, you enter negative beliefs into an AI that's running, and this you envision this AI is just going up and down and eliminating all those. You can say, okay, well that's the end of it. I'm cured. No, it's something you have to do multiple times. Um, but through that, I, it it wasn't really noticeable at first, but then it was one of those
Mhm,
things after a couple weeks. It's like, wow! All of a sudden, it's like, wow! I am much more confident. I am much more
mhm,
calm.
mhm,
Before, uh, yeah, I would have been before if you were to even get me on a camera, like, oh my god, and you're moving so fast, indicating how much fear you're under.
mhm,
Um, it really started to take a hold for me, and to as far as one of your other points, are they implanting things in you? The hypnosis I've been through,
mhm,
like I said, it was a recording.
mhm,
The times I did it live, I remember every single thing that was said, but the recordings, yes, I sit down and it's like, okay, listen to every word that's spoken. Okay, I can repeat it. Um,
mhm.
yes, let's do it over and over again. Like, this isn't doing anything, but you just keep plugging at it, and there's nothing magical in it. You just,
Right.
slowly relax, and what the relaxation for is to let your rational mind, your shield,
Mhm,
just kind of drop. You know what's being said, so you know that nothing dangerous is being implanted. And if you're concerned about dangerous things being implanted, that's where getting a good therapist that you trust. If you don't have that trust, they're not going to have authority and it won't work anyway. It's
Right.
like a lot of stage hypnosis is actually people faking it. They want to. It's going to naturally draw the hams in the crowd, and they will,
Right.
oh yeah, I'm doing this anyway. But there's an element of people that's working on as well. Good hypnotists can kind of weed those people out, but most stage hypnosis now they'll leave them in because it's good for effect. But
Right.
yeah, if you don't trust the person, it probably won't work anyway. If the person makes you afraid, no matter what the how do I say this, no matter what the implant is, like, let's say you've
Mhm.
been to somebody you suspect is, you know, nefarious or something. The second you have fear kick in, that will
Mhm.
override because the fears, of course, in your, deep part of your lizard brain, that will override anything that your conscious brain has. And if you think it won't, try holding your breath until you die. Eventually that part of the brain, whether you pass out or not, will kick in, and yeah,
Right.
you cannot directly um, overrule that part of your brain. You have to use things like hypnosis, use things like visualization and emotion to reach
Mhm.
down to that part of your brain, because that part of your brain does not speak English. It speaks in emojis. This is
Right.
good. This is happy. This is
Right.
sad. You can't say, stop believing this. It doesn't care.
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
but yeah, that was one of the big things for me, was learning what hypnosis was.
Mhm.
I grew up in a very strict Christian household, and they were like, "Woo woo," and no, no, it's not woo woo. You're not
Right.
barking like a dog.
Right.
You can use, somebody who's skilled on it can use it for nefarious purposes. However,
Mhm.
if you're seeing a therapist, just have them sit down and talk to you about it. Make sure
Right.
you trust the therapist. You'd be surprised at how good your intuition is of people. A
Mhm.
lot of times you have negative feelings. Listen to those negative feelings.
Right.
Our brains are designed to keep us safe. They will default to the negative, but if you're ever around a therapist, why don't I trust this person? What is it?
Mhm.
Maybe talk to somebody else they've helped. Because it could be that it could be you're not comfortable with them. Okay. If you're not comfortable with them, well, hypnosis won't work anyway because you don't trust them. They don't have authority. So you'll be faking it. Um, is there something about their body language? Something about, is there something their subconscious is picking up on that you're not listening to? Um,
Mhm.
Not all therapists are created equal, but yeah, if you
That's
find a
true.
therapist you can trust, it's not going to be, chances are it won't be anything magical. Most
Mhm.
often, you're just in a relaxed state, and it's just somebody talking to you. It's kind of like what you do. So a lot of it's just a guided meditation. It's just,
Right.
okay, envision yourself doing this, and you know,
Right. Right.
it's the second, you can have a lot of therapists won't mind if you have them recorded. If you're that concerned with it, you can always have a tape recorder, and you can listen to it later. And um, it's not hard at all. You have to want to go along with hypnosis. Most often, it's nothing that they can look into my eyes. Oh, I'm instantly out. No, you can overrule it. You can, like, no, I'm going to
Right.
stay awake through this. You can do whatever you want to with me. But yeah, a lot of it is trust, authority, and yeah. When it comes to hypnosis, over 75% of whether or not hypnosis is going to work or not is based upon the person giving it. Only 5% is based upon the person receiving it. A lot of people say, "Well, I can't be hypnotized." Uh, Chances are you can. We do it to ourselves all the time through repeated auto
Mhm.
suggestion. I'm no good. Blah blah blah. You're hypnotizing yourself. So
Right. Wow. That is so interesting. I never thought about it. I mean, I've heard of hypnotherapy, but that's so interesting in that it helped you in such a way. And I like that you say, it's not a magical instant, I'm better kind of thing. I mean, well, at this point, nothing is that way, right? um, I've seen just a bit of somebody's comment, but it said something about I have a hard time choosing me. Um, are you getting better at choosing yourself in certain situations? Was that, you know, growing up kind of around the things that you did, was that a very difficult thing for you to do? And how did you kind of get to the place where you're like, you know what? Nope, I'm choosing me. Like, was there a moment or was it just a build up? What did that look like when you decided to choose you?
Interesting. It wasn't until after I'd undergone, yes, in fact, I know it. It wasn't until I'd undergone the confidence training I was talking about earlier that I was
Mm-hmm.
able to start. And I guess it makes sense because you have to have confidence in who you are. The reason why
Mm-hmm.
so many people keep asking, why do I attract narcissists? Well, they look for people that are not confident, look for people that are down on themselves, look, kind of walk around like that all the time, taking up as little space as possible, not looking, but because they have an overabundance of confidence. Um, with with that, yeah, it required a lot of confidence on my part, which I did not have until just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And once having that confidence, that is when I was really able to start. Okay, yes, this is harmful for me. However
Mm-hmm.
much, even ruling against myself, I want to do this, but I know I'm going to choose long-term health over short-term health. A lot of things that you think about, like drinking. Well, it's not good for our long-term health. It's all like, oh, I want to have this immediate. Well, it's very fleeting, and you're actually hurting yourself in the future. Taking
Right.
care of yourself, becoming your own butler is one of the terms I hear a lot. You know, loving yourself enough to take care of yourself. Doing small things, making your bed, um, setting up the coffee maker, even just that
Right.
simple act. Setting up the coffee maker, a little Keurig where it's almost good to go, the lid's almost shut. Simple
Right.
things like that. When you get up in the morning, uh, oh, thanks, past me. I can just slam this down. I got coffee. All
Yes.
right. Simple things like that. You're telling yourself, I'm worth it. Once you start getting to that point, then you can start making that decision with other people. This relationship is hurting me. What is it
Right.
about this relationship? Can I salvage anything from it? Well, a lot of people, unfortunately, not. Um, but with others, yeah, unfortunately, I've had to cut mine down to how's the weather. Um, did they ever rebuild City Hall since it burned down? No. Anything new going on in town? Sadly, that's about it. Um, anything else? Anything medical? No. Anything political? No. Anything spiritual? No, because that's woo
Right.
woo. That's this. It's like, if I
Right.
was to live my life like that, um, and that's one thing that I found interesting about self confidence too, is the confidence to say, you know what, I was wrong. I've had my mind changed about this. When people say, well, that's not self confidence. Actually, it is, because
Right.
when you're in a fear mindset, you're like, no, I know this is true. Whatever you say, you're wrong. This is what I
Mm.
believe. The evidence be damned. And that was one thing I've noticed, is that, yeah, I'm starting to change my mind a lot more often than I thought I would. It's like, yeah, I've never
Right.
seen it from that perspective before. That is kind of nice to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love how you said long-term health versus short-term health.
Mm.
And I like, instead of good and bad, a lot of times when we look at a situation and we label it as good or bad, that can be really hard to walk away from, right? If you believe that divorce is bad, which it is not bad, but if you grew up religious as I did and you believed that divorce was bad and you were a bad person for doing it, that can really be detrimental to your life and your outcome. And what I found is if you looked at it as this is healthy versus unhealthy, is this relationship healthy for me? No,
Mm.
it's not. And then that almost, in some ways, I don't want to say makes it easier, but it allows you to see options and see the things for what they really are. So I like that. So long term versus short term and healthy versus unhealthy. I think those are really positive things that can help us a lot. And I'm so glad you brought up long term versus short term. And to
Mm.
somebody, I seen this comment earlier. If you're catching up on 2 times speed, we must sound like chipmunks. I can only imagine. I want to move to now because this is also, I always thought interesting. You came out of a cult, but you did not come out of a religious cult. Most people, when they think of cults, they think of something religious. So I was wondering if you could, again, as much as you can share, kind of tell us what was this cult? Like, what attracted you to it? Obviously, cults attract very intelligent people, people who are hardworking and very diligent and strong. So what was your cult and what attracted you?
Good question. I was just trying to trace it back. So my parents were part of a. Wouldn't consider them a cult. Um, I was thinking my parents were part of a very, which is odd, very non-confrontal group. Very peace loving. Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
consider that. I was wondering if that gave me a predisposition. I never really gave it any thought. But I think what attracted me, and it was slightly religious, but that wasn't the bent of why I went into it. Um, a lot of what attracted me, that's interesting. A lot of what attracted me to the cult was simply same thing. It draws a lot of people in. Like, oh, you're special. You want to join us? Come
Right.
on. You can. At first it's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This guy's really smart, and he's
Mm-hmm.
talk about magnets. They can help you. Okay, I'd be willing to hear about that. And okay, man,
Right.
might be something to it. I mean, we're still figuring out how the mind works. I mean, not we, they.
Right.
My,
Right.
but um, yeah. So okay, I'd like to see that. And yeah, it slowly grew into, well, we believe we're the army of Joel and that we have to take command of the earth. And then, of course, it's a little bit further like, okay, maybe I misheard them. Okay, fine. Because everybody loves each other here. Oh, it's oh so good.
Right.
He's like, excuse me, what did you mean about that? Oh, you shouldn't be asking about that. No, no. Then the love bombing stops. I'm like, okay. A lot of times we're in a position where if we're being love bombed, we want it so much because it fills us with a need that, um, cults, they appeal a lot to people with low self confidence. So, who has low self confidence? Just about everybody. Very few
Right.
people have a lot of confidence. It's something we're all working on to some extent or another. We all have psychological needs. We all have the
Mm-hmm.
need for acceptance at some point. Part of Maslow's pyramid is belonging to a group. We all have that built within us, right
Right.
above psychological needs. We want to belong to a group, a tribe, um,
Yes.
and that appealed to that because you know what? If you look outside, you see crime, you see immorality, you see insert symptom here. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, 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 okay, yeah, I spot that. Yeah, they'll make you feel really smart. Like, yeah, yeah, you're one of us. You were called to be part of us. Like, oh, that's yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, um,
Right.
but yeah, it didn't take long to realize that I don't like where this is going. and you start
Mhm.
asking questions, and that's when it was actually kind of funny because I didn't have a lot of self-confidence at that point, but I started
Mhm.
treating it like an ex-girlfriend at that point. It's like, "Oh, no," a breakup with an ex-girlfriend that's like, you know, um, but we can still be friends. I got a better idea. Let's be enemies. Oh, but we come on, we can still be friends. Oh, no, 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 stop! Don't call me ever again. Um, but it was,
Let's be enemies.
yeah, like, but yeah, because really, it was one of the things I started reading on, and that was the first crack in the armor. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to test this. It was back then. It was
Yeah.
Cold Awareness Group, which unfortunately Scientology took over and killed the wealth of information they had there. But now you can get a lot of cult information from Rick Ross. There's several
Mhm.
other cult websites like that. But yeah, it was just a matter of like seeing that crack in that armor. It's like this doesn't sound good. I mean,
Right.
we're not living in the mountains, living on beans and AK-47 ammo yet.
Right.
But it's like it sounds like this may go there. So it's like, okay, I'll just take
Yeah.
some of this and find out if I'm misreading this or not. And just use some of the terminology, like, do you
Right.
believe that we're here to take control of the earth, or what was it? Something like, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody could take control of the earth? Oh yeah, that's what we're here for. Okay. Cross that one off. Okay. You know, uh, do you think that society is going to become, null and void, and that pretty soon we're going to be called? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're called to this, and it's what our destiny is. And oh yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, this is a cult, and I don't want anything to do with. Oh no, 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 no! You're just listening to you know evil teaching, and no, you have to make sure you don't succumb to that. I'm like, well, yeah, this relationship isn't working for me. But no, no, you need to come back. Nah, let's just be enemies. That's I'm good with that. Oh
That's
no,
enough.
no, no, and once you see that crack, humor can really help you because you kind of treat things whatever you can with a humorous tone to it because it'll help you stay in a critical mindset because and since then I've learned that yeah, humor is one of the emotions our bottom part of our brain talks in, and if you can keep in that, you can keep yourself being at least a little not satirical. What's the term I'm thinking of? Maybe I guess critical would be a term I can use. You can be a little more discerning because you're keeping
Mhm.
your thinking
Mhm.
part of your brain involved versus the, oh, don't you want some love? Come on, come here, let's have a group hug. Yeah, okay, I'm group hugging with people who want to take control of the earth. That may end badly. I'm thinking, mm, you know, bad warning sign. Bad track
Right.
record. So,
Wow.
but
So now, when you decided to leave, was it pretty easy for you to walk away, or did they try to follow you and hunt you down? I mean, how did that go?
luckily for me, it was pretty easy. But I think a lot of what made it easy was just simply being able to find stuff online. And you don't
Mm,
necessarily, I mean, when you're part of a group, don't just because you find a web page that says, "Oh, these people believe this," I mean, for
mhm.
peace sakes, you can find all kinds of crap about anybody. That's not necessarily true. It's just something that go back with, and hey, don't throw it in their face. Say, "Oh, this this group says that you've done this," and just ask
Right.
questions. And once you start getting the answers to those questions, yeah, you can, just because not everything you'll find necessarily true, but once you start getting answers to the
Right.
questions, see where they're going. Uh, Once I was able to keep that humor engaged, it was really easy for me to stay out. And I think humor is a natural defense for me. I think it is for a
Mhm.
lot of people. yeah,
Mhm.
nervous laughter type thing. But yeah, it pretty much. I don't think there was ever any weird following or anything like that. But I
Right.
think at that point too, I think I made myself such an uninviting person they didn't necessarily want me back because like you once you if it's really a cult, once you expose them for what they are, I mean,
Mhm.
not saying the whole world, but in
Right.
a talk, and they're like, yeah, we do believe that. Yeah, we do believe that. Well, that's not what I'm in here for. Let's just quit right now. Not these.
Mhm.
Well, let's be friends. No, once you find out that they're you know uh, unhealthy, that
Right.
would be that's a good example of a relationship that probably I couldn't save anything out of because they were
Mhm.
so unhealthy. Once you start talking the belief of violence to further beliefs, I don't
Mhm.
think I want to be part of your group anymore.
Yeah.
That's a deal breaker in my. I
That's
can't break. I can break bread with if you disagree with me on politics, fine, I'll break bread with you. You disagree
right.
with me about music, even if it's disco. It hurts, but I'll break bread with you. But yeah, once you start talking violence, that's a no. That's a no go. I'm not in
So
it for
we
that.
can we can break bread even though I have Bee Gees hair. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let me get a
I
hairy
love
chest, get some gold chains on, get some long sideburns, start wearing
right.
wingtip shoes, and then we'll talk.
This just out of the corner of my eye. I suggest 2 times speed on Christy just for fun. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. um, I I had something else I was going to say, and I completely forgot. Oh, yes, you revert to humor to help you in situations. I just resort to throwing cheese and RBF. I'm just like,
Nice,
people leave
nice.
me alone. They're like, okay, well, that little angry hobbit over there, we're going the other way. I don't even
Mm.
have to say, let's be enemies. They're like, we don't like you. Oh my goodness. Awesome. Awesome. Ben, this has been so fun and so insightful. I mean, I know so much more about you now than I did before. And I think not I think, I know you bring such wisdom and you have had such an interesting life. And I know, and I'm just going to say it now, Tara, thank you for convincing Ben to do this because I know you had a lot to do with it. You do really have an amazing story and so much insight to bring.
Mm.
So, one thing I like to ask my guests is, what is a final thought for us today um, as we head out? What is something that you want us to remember, or a word, or whatever it
Mm.
is?
You are all worthy of love and worthy of a healthy relationship. It took me a long time to accept that, even though you have somebody say it. I say I'm worthy of a healthy relationship. I'm worthy of a healthy relationship. No, now say it and mean it. I'm worthy of a. Once you just get it into your being that you are worthy of a healthy relationship. You know, and that there's whatever your problem is, there's good therapists will, if they can't help you, a good therapist will at least steer you in the right direction. And
Right.
I know there's some people with some really powerful stories in on the boat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody there's you name a problem, there's somebody on the boat that's probably been through it. So
Right.
just that one gets me in the feels.
Oh.
um, but yes, there's nothing that anybody's done that makes them unlovable. We all we're our worth we are our worst critics. We're always down on
Right.
ourselves, and just try to be good, to yourself. I guess that's about all I have. I would like
Yeah.
to know how are you adjusting to life out on the Kansas farm.
Out on the prairie. Well, I tell you what, I'm not sure what I'm allergic to. I think it's ragweed, but it kicked up last night so bad. Michael was asleep, and I just started sneezing and coughing and like blowing my nose. And so I thought, I'm gonna leave the bedroom so he can sleep. I'm gonna go out into the living room. Well, the dogs were asleep on the recliners, so I wasn't gonna kick them out of where they were sleeping. They're snoring and sleeping away. So I got my duvet cover and a pillow, and I put two kitchen chairs together, and I sat upright and coughed and sneezed and blew my nose for like 3 hours. And but my tan is coming along nicely because, you do get a lot of direct sun when you ain't got no trees around. But no, it's very fun. Michael is going to be heading out this weekend to go to El Paso to his job. And so yeah, it's good. Like I said, trying to get my studio set up and worked out, and my artistic photographer eye is like, that's not right, that's not perfect, that's not good, and I just have to
Yeah.
let it go. You're gonna get there. um, but yeah. So no, it's going good. It's going good. So I'm excited to have landed, and I'm back in my hometown. So I'm back to where I grew up, and
Nice.
it feels much different this time around than it did any time before. But I think having left the very earthy energy of Kentucky, I'm ready for this. Tara,
Mhm.
yeah, I've got visions. Now we just have to, bring it in, like some white walls. And I have this really cute, you can kind of see it, this barnwood. This is a whole
Yeah.
accent wall, but there's a window right here. So I have to figure out, I got to get like the right sheer curtain so that it filters the light through just enough that I look angelic, but not so much that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I look washed out.
Yes. I mean, I think the lighting looks really good.
Well,
Like
thank you.
nice, nice,
If
nice
y'all
and sunny.
seen, yes, I'm telling you, if y'all seen my studio, it's a can of sparkling water, a notebook, a pen, and a lamp, a little table lamp with no lampshade. To get the right lighting. But thank you, everybody, for being here. Ben, stick around for a few minutes. On that note, I'm going to have Stasia take us out. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And we will see you on the next one. Oh, Kristen, Melinda, thank you. You guys are so kind.